So if you've been a subscriber of the Gradvine channel, I'm sure that the engineering management program is not something that you need an introduction to. And today we have someone super special. And perhaps again, if you've been following Gradvine, this person doesn't need an introduction whatsoever. We've got the program director of Purdue's engineering management program, Eric Vandevoorde, with us today. And we are going to dive deep into not just the Purdue MEM, but the entire thought process of studying abroad and what you can expect on that journey, right from a person who's going to mentor you through that journey if you're fortunate enough to make it to the program. Eric, thank you so much for joining us today. It's actually surreal that we are sitting down in Hyderabad doing this.
It feels really good. Thanks for having me, Srikar. And it's a pleasure now. We had the chance to meet in person at Purdue's campus, last spring, and it feels really amazing to now be with you directly here at the Gradvine offices in Hyderabad.
Oh no, it's an absolute pleasure to have you. And we'll get to the MEM parts, right? Of course, it's going to be a big part of the discussion. But first time in Hyderabad or no?
I guess officially this is my third. Looking forward to maybe taking in a little more of the culture and history of Telangana and Hyderabad while I'm here this time, but it feels good to be back.
All right. And how have your past visits to India been?
Yeah, wow. I mean, amazing, right? Some things that stand out to me. I've spent a little time in Mumbai and in Delhi and Chennai and Bangalore and Hyderabad, maybe in Ahmedabad a little bit. Going to be visiting Pune for a little bit this time too. I think my favorite memory, going to the Taj Mahal for sure. Second favorite memory, I got to spend an afternoon with the parents of one of my students. This was during my first visit, and we toured around Mumbai together. My Mayank, he's doing great at AWS, by the way. That was a really special visit for sure. And then, of course, the food. Started my day, with some lovely dosa and some biryani hopefully later.
Of course, there will be biryani, in Hyderabad's in the conversation for sure. But India, right? So many students from India go and study in the US. A lot of engineers, people from all different backgrounds. But the US aside, Purdue has seen a lot of interest from across all age groups and disciplines in India. We have undergrads applying, we have people applying to CS, MEM, MBA, we have people applying to PhDs, and all of them have Purdue at least in the conversation, if not it being the top choice. Yeah. And I could sense that, feeling of comfort when I was on the Purdue campus. It was very close-knit, it was fast because it was cut off from all of the, urban hullabaloo and stuff like that, but culturally something very welcoming and comfortable in that campus. But, from your point of view, what is it about Purdue that makes it such a cultural fit for international students?
Yeah, okay. Very good question. I appreciate that. I think the first thing that comes to my mind is that, we do have a very long history of being a welcoming and, globally represented institution. Not only students from all 50 of the United States, but, students from practically every country on the planet, which is pretty special. And I think what really brings everybody together at Purdue's campus is the fact that we have highly capable, motivated, curious students, and they really want to investigate and solve problems, and usually do that in a hands-on applied way. And there is kind of a specialness or a magic when you get, tens of thousands of undergraduate and graduate students together that are all kind of united around the idea of learning and bettering themselves, hopefully, and then bettering the world because of that experience. So I think that's something that really brings it together. I guess the other thought I would share there is, we are in the Midwest of the US, and we do have a really good regional reputation for politeness and kindness and openness. And I grew up in the Midwest of the US in Illinois, and so I kind of maybe take it for granted a little bit, but I do hear all the time from students, and then even our alumni that come back that have been to our larger urban areas on the coast and things like that, I miss that comfort and that warmth of Purdue University. And so that's something that I've had to realize is a real thing, that Midwestern hospitality and warmth. So to me, it's a combination of all those factors.
Oh yeah, and I could certainly feel all of that when I was there. And I've been to different parts of the States, and it was the first time in the Midwest for me. And it was really memorable. And thank you for making that visit so very comfortable for me.
That was a ton of fun. Ton of fun.
And Eric, now obviously the inevitable, we have to talk about MEM, right? And that's what the Gradvine audience wants as well, right? So when I was applying, right, in 2014, I entered fall 2014, applying in 2013. What was the MEM? It was probably a new degree, a niche degree. People were asking me why I was doing it. I just loved the curriculum. It was the education that I wanted, and it was almost like a leap of faith. Fast forward 10 years later, I've been in this business of consulting, advising students, picking programs, and after a computer science and maybe a data science, the MEM is the next most common name that we hear from students all the time. How have you seen the evolution of this degree? Because you've been involved with the program for a while now. How has it changed in terms of industry perception, student perception, and for you as an educator as well?
Yeah, great question. It's interesting when I'm celebrating, it'll be 11 years in January with Purdue MEM. And, those first couple of years that I was leading the program, I kind of experienced what you mentioned, which is, companies being unfamiliar a little bit, kind of wondering, well, what is this? Is it technical? Is it business? I said, no, it's the best of both, right? I don't have those conversations anymore, right. Because companies have come to understand that an MEM type of student, an MEM degree, is bringing something really unique that's directly aligned with their current and their future business needs. So we don't get those questions anymore. And that, to me, that showcases how an MEM degree is really positioned, for the long term, when it comes to industry. The other piece I might mention here would be that, I think you have a unique perspective about MEMs because you've gone, through the program at Dartmouth. I don't think there are a lot of, organizations that have direct exposure to an MEM degree and curriculum like you do. And so certainly that gives you the inside track. When we look at the longevity or the history of an MEM degree, interestingly enough, it actually started in the late 1940s, kind of also an important time here in India, after, the World War II. And it started really at an undergraduate level, which is interesting. But now it's really proliferated at the graduate level, and I think rightly so. I think a lot of applicants may not be aware that the degree has been around, for over 80 years, but really has come into its own as technology has advanced and as industry needs have shifted to adopt this. So I feel really good about the present and the future of MEM. And I think companies have started to realize the real value of hiring somebody with technical depth and then also business breadth.
And it's also a very unique position it has in the market, right? Because earlier when I was having conversations with students who typically wanted to move away from core engineering, maybe not on the shop floor as much or not coding as much, into more of a middle-level management or leadership role, they would consider the degree. But I have people with 5, 6, 7 years of prior work experience who typically would have just blindly applied for an MBA, now very willingly applying to an MEM program itself, right? And that whole link with the MBA seems to have gone. Are you seeing the same in terms of the industry? Are recruiters arguing, should I recruit an MBA instead of an MEM? Why should I recruit an MEM? Is it a new degree? Or those sort of conversations?
Yeah, also an important question. I'm thinking immediately what comes to mind is several of our students, now alumni, have been hired by, let's say, a large e-commerce company for positions that are typically targeted for MBAs. And, so I think that's evidence right there that, companies recognize the bottom line value of the MEM skill set. Another piece for me, I suppose, would be really an MBA. It's been commoditized a little bit, if I could say that. The top programs are still fantastic. But for me, when I'm talking with an applicant, my conversation centers around what's led you to MEM relative to an MBA. It always comes back to where are you going, in the future. For us, MEM, we try to have it be that bridge between a student's current profile and experience and where they're going in 5 and 10 years, and how can we be aligned there. So, for somebody that maybe does want to get fully away from engineering, perhaps an MBA is a better fit. But for the vast majority of our students, you still want to have a foot in engineering, whether you're going into product or operations or program or supply chain, et cetera. And I guess also, the job market really always will value the technical skill set the most. And I'm not just referencing H-1B, I'm not just referencing STEM OPT. I'm talking about like actual core skills that are part of a company's long-term strategy. And so the technical skills are always the key to get in. And then the business skills are the complement to that. So I think we've seen a lot fewer questions from applicants about MEM versus MBA. And again, I think a lot of that is just dictated by the pull from industry for this type of skill set.
Fantastic. And I think we've sort of established, the strength of the MEM degree and the unique proposition it offers for a lot of candidates. I've also seen Purdue be, definitively, the top choice, or at least one of the top choices for aspirants to, get in. And I know that, a lot of our audience and you viewers know about the wonderful things it offers, like the co-op and we have the curriculum being so flexible and of course a very close-knit cohort. But I'd like you to, delve into what has made Purdue, such a fantastic program, and not just from your end, but in applicants' minds as well.
How much time do we have? I feel very humbled by your nice words there, Srikar, and also very grateful. I'm reflecting on these last 10 years or so, and just the wonderful people that I've been able to work with through our program. Hundreds of students now over this decade, many of whom I'm still in touch with, and that feels really special to me. And it also just feels very genuine that we want to hear from our alums and still stay connected, and also vice versa. Whether that's an update on a career, success, whether that's a wedding, whether that's a relocation, or just, hey, how's things going? Or I'm going to be at Grace Hopper, presenting with my company, Goldman Sachs. We just heard from somebody about that. It's like a day ago. And I guess to me, what this underscores is people first. Like Purdue MEM is a human-forward, human-centric program. Even though we're in our College of Engineering, even though we're working with future technical leaders and managers, the core skill is humanity. And that's really like the culture of our program. And I do think amidst all the great rankings and job outcomes and curricular flexibility and co-ops and all these great things, that's what is the secret sauce for us. That's what makes it special. When we're talking with applicants, we're kind of evaluating them as like almost junior colleagues. This is a relationship where we want to be a guide, we want to be a mentor, an advocate that, whether things are going amazing or if you've had a bump in the road that we're going to figure out, like we're with you through all of those pieces, like for the whole experience, because we want to be. It's not an obligation for us, it's a privilege. And that just really grounds the entire dynamic of the program, if I could say it that way, not to be too sappy. But I think that is something very special and something that we value a lot. I think the other piece, hopefully then, is that permeates throughout our student community. We try to really coach our students to understand like an abundance mindset. There's a lot of headlines, some accurate, some inaccurate. In today's age, there can sometimes feel like there should be an internal competition or something like that when it comes to job markets and co-op outcomes. But for us, we take a lot of proactive steps to go through community building exercises and activities through our orientation week, through our weekly professional development seminars, through our social outings, through our PM club, and many other, one-on-one meetings, which are my favorite thing to do. So, yeah, I just think that human-centric approach permeates the whole culture of Purdue MEM, and then fits really nicely, as I mentioned, within that broader, like, welcoming and warmth, approach of the university. So yeah.
All right, and thank you for that insight into how the program works culturally, right? Apart from the co-op and stats and the average salaries and the placement rates, but I know that all of you guys watching. Am I on this camera? All right, great. So all of you guys watching would be interested in those numbers, and Eric is not going to mention that blatantly on camera, but we're going to link it in the description. The process always leads to great outcomes, and you can click on Purdue's career outcomes page in the description, and you can see what this wonderful culture leads to overall, right? Because we're not going to talk about it in terms of hard numbers, because there's so much more which we'll get to in the later part of the interview.
Sure.
So Eric, it is established that Purdue is aspirational, right? It's a dream school and a dream program for the MEM for a lot of candidates. What do you look for in a candidate? Is it a GPA that you look for? Is it a magical number of years of work experience, or do you only look at IITians, or how do you view an application?
Sure. We have a very specific algorithm that calculate. No, I'm just kidding. No algorithms, no formulas there. Really, no minimums when it comes to GPAs or years of experience, or GRE no longer required, but no minimums there for those candidates that still might choose to submit. So I like to look at it really as a blend of like science and art, to be quite honest. What are we looking for? I think the number one thing we're looking for is individuals that know what they're about. What is the primary motivation for you to want to pursue your graduate studies in the US at Purdue in an MEM degree? Why do you want to be here with us, right? To me, that's a really foundational element of the review process. That's also, quite honestly, the reason we do interviews for all of our applicants that make it to that step and before they would receive an admission offer, because that, again, allows us to connect with them on a personal level, on a human level. We can see those measurables, if you will, in terms of GPA and years of experience from the candidate materials. What we don't get a sense for is sort of your personality and your communication style and your enthusiasm. These things all are important factors for us. And I don't say this in a way that's giving me satisfaction, but there are a lot of highly qualified candidates that we have, that did not receive an offer of admission, and that's nothing to do, with their background or their future success. Of course, I'm sure they've gone on and done wonderful things, but sometimes for us, when we have that conversation, we just didn't get a strong enough sense of fit. Each program, we're a member of the Master of Engineering Management Programs Consortium, with 8 other wonderful schools too. And, there are many other MEM programs beyond that are wonderful as well. Each of these programs have their own identity, and their curriculum is maybe aligned in a different way and for different paths relative to ours. And so we're really just trying to understand, are we the best program to help this person achieve their goals? And, also then answering questions, will they be academically successful? Do we want to work with these students? Things of this nature. Maybe in summary, what I'll say, it's a holistic process. When our students come to Purdue MEM, we want you to grow holistically, all right? We want you to grow as a person. We want you to grow academically. We want you to grow professionally. It's that trio that really is the complete experience that we want our students to have. So in order for us to align our goals, with our admission process, we're also looking for somebody that is interested in holistic growth. That's not just looking for, I give this, I get that kind of approach. And we've had success with students from a wide range of institutions from their undergrad. We've had success with students from a wide range of skill sets, 0 to 12 years of experience, right, in terms of full-time work ex. So there's no sort of magic combination in my mind. If you're stronger in GRE or GPA, that's great. And maybe that accounts for maybe, no years of work X. If you have 3, 4, 5 years of work X, but your grades weren't so great in undergrad, maybe that balance is out there. But again, ultimately, human-centric, holistic growth, that combo of art and science, that's our approach when it comes to selection.
All right. And I love the part that you mentioned about fit, right? And that's something that we greatly advocate at Gradvine. Even though we are guilty of doing rankings videos for various programs, and we want to take it down, but it gets us views. So it's such a ethical conundrum there. But rankings, right? Like, do you really think any student can definitively rank? Somebody saying is Purdue better than XYZ University, or is something else that is Ivy League better than Purdue? How do you view fit versus rank in terms of career outcomes?
Yeah, that's a good question. That is a good question. I mean, rankings are this sort of beautiful curse, right? And they are. I mean, if you don't know this, they are a little bit of a game, that institutions have to play, right? Because of course, like we all might, we want to be well ranked and have a strong reputation. But the ranking formulas. I know you have the NRF here in India as well, right? Those can shift from year to year. Different rankings have different, factors that are more highly weighted. We don't need to get into those details per se. The rankings are great, in my opinion, as a baseline starting point. So sure, like establish your top tier, figure out what are the programs that have those strong outcomes that are regarded well by industry. But really that's maybe to me where the rankings consideration would be best to end. And I'm saying this from Purdue as a highly ranked school, right? Make your own rankings, I think. Like once you've established this certain group of target institutions, the rankings don't matter at that point. If you go to the first ranked school relative to the, 5th or the 15th ranked school in the US for your degree of choice, like that's not probably going to impact the strength of your job outcome. It's just not going to matter to employers. Employers are not hiring because you went to school 3 instead of school 5. So that back to your question about fit, right? You have to go somewhere that wants you there, right? When you're joining an institution, yes, you're joining the institution, but you're joining this small community within that institution, and that group of actual human beings need to know you and want you to be successful, and you need to understand and believe that they are investing into your success just as you are investing into your success. So, you could be going to the number one school, but if you can't name anybody there and they can't name you, I don't know. So, program fit, I think, is essential. Rankings are great as a starting point, but then really, I would encourage students to make their own set of rankings based on, just the experience that they felt, the vibes that they're getting, the connection that they feel talking with alums and current students and program faculty and staff, because those will be sort of the day-to-day lived experiences that you will have in that program. You're not going to care. You're not going to walk around every day going, I'm at the number 5 ranked school, right? So I'm good, right? That's just out the window once you're into the experience itself. So you really have to go somewhere where you feel wanted, where you feel like you're being invested in, and where you're excited to be.
Absolutely. And, it used to hurt me very much that Dartmouth never used to feature in the top 100 US ranks in the world ever. Small school.
Exactly.
We're going to feature highly in the rankings.
And an amazing school, nonetheless.
Yeah, absolutely. But we'll leave the ranking part, aside now. So, Eric, you have to gauge fit in a limited application material set, right? You have recommendation letters, you have a statement of purpose, maybe a personal statement. Until the interview, I'm guessing the statement of purpose is a pretty big part of the application, right?
True. Very true.
What do you hope to see in a statement of purpose generally?
All right. Statement of purpose. Very much an essential element of my review. I think what I can say, I'll give you like the order of operations. All right. When I'm looking through an application. And by the way, for Purdue MEM, I look through every single application personally before we make decisions, good or bad, I guess. The very first thing I do is I take a quick glance at a resume. All right. After the resume, I go right to the statement. Right. If we've still found some fit, from there I go to the other documents as far as transcripts, and letters and things of this nature. But yeah, that's a quick overview of the resume, and then it's right into the statement. There seems to be a certain formula that's common for a statement, and that's fine. You can still stand out within that formula. What am I looking for specifically in a statement? I think the first thing is, this is a chance to help us understand who you really are. And I'm going to be a broken record, who you really are as a person and as a human being. I can't see that as much on your resume or your transcript or your TOEFL score, right? I can't understand what motivates you and what drives you and the impact you want to make. So the first thing I'm really looking for is just, who are you? So help me understand a little bit more about who you are. Obviously, within a professional context, and but give me a sense of who you are. The second thing I would say is, why specifically do you want to be part of our program, right? Not just an MEM program, but our Purdue MEM program, because again, lots of great MEM programs that are out there from the consortium and other schools, but we each have our own identities and curriculum and approach, right? So why specifically Purdue? Certain classes, certain experiences. Have you talked to alumni or current students? How much have you invested into understanding our program? And we have plenty of content you can view, our blogs, our videos, our alumni profiles and things of this nature. So there's no shortage of information for you to understand our program, right? So if you want us to invest in you, invest some time understanding us. That's another piece. I think a third thing, I will say the grammar and writing quality do matter to me as well. We're an industry focused program. If you're wanting to go into roles that have a huge emphasis on communication and require a lot of strong people skills, these product and TPM styles of roles, but also, others more broadly, operations or entrepreneurship or consulting, you have to be an effective communicator. You will get better as a communicator while you're in the program, but those written communication skills do matter, not only for your professional success, but also, for your job search and for particularly your business classes that you'll be taking, which involve a lot of case studies and writing and teamwork. So I will say that's a factor for us as well. Maybe the one thing I'll say to shy away from would just be, how do I want to phrase this? Just something that's overly formulaic. Make it personal, make it you. I'll stop there.
Yeah, and this is so very relevant at this time of the year, right, where people are scrambling to get their applications in basic time. And of course, the landscape has evolved with ChatGPT and other AI tools at this point in time. And that relates to your point about writing and grammar being a big part of it. But students or applicants we see tend to over obsess on that, and they want to create a beautifully written and worded piece of literary art, which no doubt AI can create, like a very, very nicely written thing. But they all seem very nicely written things saying nothing, right? Very hollow. It's not you. There's very limited specific goals. There's no specific fit. Like you could say, oh, I want to become a product manager at Amazon, and the marketing course at Purdue teaches me about segmentation, targeting, and positioning. Sure, any marketing course teaches you that. The person reviewing it knows what a marketing course teaches. Sure. But what does it mean for you? Yeah. And while applicants are obsessing about, do universities use AI detectors, we say, listen, they may or may not use it, but once they read it, they know this is not you, because it's so very hollow. So what's your view on AI and crafting this perfect perceived statement of purpose using ChatGPT?
Yeah, for sure. A very timely question. I have a feeling we'll be talking about this for many years to come, won't we? first thing I'll say, use AI for sure. Use some AI in your statement writing. Okay, but one of my favorite music groups is named Pearl Jam. They're awesome. They came out in the early 90s. I have gray hair, so it's cool. I was listening to an interview with their bassist, Jeff Ament. He said he was talking with another musician who was using AI to create songs. And he said, he talked to this person for like an hour and about the process of it and the outcomes and what that person, found interesting about that approach. And, at the end of that discussion, this Pearl Jam band member said, yeah, but you're missing the best part of the experience, which is the creative process of the songwriting. It's not just the end product, it's the actual experience of going through this. And I thought that so perfectly encapsulates, AI when it comes to writing that's supposed to describe us as a person, right? So, if you're using AI to the point that it overshadows the humanness, it's in my opinion, detrimental, and sort of has the opposite intended effect. It actually obscures and hides who you are a little bit rather than showcasing who you are. I guess another thought on that would be, if we're using AI, it's not so much about, and when it comes to statements, it's not so much about maybe the integrity or the ethics of it in my viewpoint. Certainly, if we're talking about academic assignments, different story, okay? So it's not so much about that. I don't have concerns there. But similarly to that comment from Jeff Ament, as you're writing your statement, if you're doing it in that old-fashioned traditional way, it's kind of similar to preparing your resume and to writing your cover letter, prepping for an interview. As you're going through the process, you are forced to reflect and really consider, why you're writing these things, why you're wanting to do this in the first place. And so you're actually, one, preparing for your interview with us while you're writing that, but it's also a really nice chance just to really, do some soul searching and really figure out like how and why and if this is the path you want to take for yourself. And so if you're leaning too heavily on a chat GPT or another AI, platform, you're also missing out on that chance to do that internal reflection for yourself. And again, that's a missed opportunity. And then the last thing I'll say, I can tell if I'm interviewing a candidate and I'm asking them questions, I can tell if I'm just getting sections of the statement of purpose, right? And if you've used ChatGPT to write your statement, I think you may be a little more likely to rely on, because you're like, oh yeah, what did I write again? Why do I want to be a technical? Oh yeah, because, okay. Versus if you've like internalized it and you really understand who you are. And when we do these interviews, we want to expand beyond the statement. So if you're kind of having to reference the words that you sort of wrote, you're not helping yourself as much. So yeah, for those reasons, in terms of, the creative process itself, for, the internalization of your own desires and motivations to study abroad, perhaps for graduate school, and then also just, your chances of actually landing that, admission offer resulting from an interview. So yeah, it's kind of like rankings.
Yeah.
Nice starting point. Yeah. From there, forget about it.
Absolutely, yeah. And for all candidates who are asking on a massive WhatsApp communities, I put it into, this detector and it says 85% AI and the other says 91% AI. Am I going to be dismissed for, whatever, our admissions committee is going to use some sort of detector? That's what we say. That's the least of your concerns. Right. They know.
Yeah.
You're going to read it once and you'd know, I'm guessing.
Well, and it's just sort of my assumption that everyone's used it to some degree. It's just to what degree.
Yeah.
And again, like have confidence in yourself. Yeah. Like bring us who you are. That's the person we're trying to evaluate as you, right? So don't give us a ChatGPT filtered version of you. Bring your authentic self and that's, be confident in who you are. That's the person we want to see.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for that. So we've established why the MEM is great, what makes Purdue fantastic. We've also talked about what you look at in an application. Now, if you're okay with it, I'd like to segue into a couple of topics that are on the top of applicants' minds in general, right? But we are at a time of the year, and I'd say even like recent history, where people are evaluating studying in the US under very different circumstances. Every day there's a piece of news about we have the $100,000 H-1B fee, the unreasonable rumors about OPT being eliminated. I don't know where that's coming from, and the job market in the US and the uncertainties and all of that, right? So while applicants are evaluating these decisions at this point in time, what advice do you have, to give them about studying in America?
Yeah.
And of course, maybe a short-term sort of career outcome post that.
Good question, and certainly a timely one we have to talk about, right? I will say, it is a confusing time. It can be a frustrating time. We've been through these things before. We have weathered in the US, the financial crisis of 2008. Obviously, we've all been through, the pandemic and that COVID experience. And, we may see some challenges, but then what tends to happen is there's a boom after that. That's what history has shown us so far, at least over these last, 20 years. I would anticipate something similar will continue. I was looking recently, I think OPT has been around since maybe like 1992. I think STEM extension, we're coming up on maybe 20 years of the original version. So these kind of sensational, stories that these things will be eliminated. Of course, with the caveat that unfortunately we cannot predict the future. But I guess history would show us that these elements have stood the test of time over these last several decades. And so I don't anticipate that that's going away. I do hear the concerns about H-1B lottery for sure. That is a currently unfolding situation. We haven't so far seen any impact negatively for Purdue MEM students. So I'm encouraged by that. I think also, looking at the history even of the H-1B, that's, I think, started around 1990. I think perhaps even by, a Republican US president. So the fact that that's been in place for several decades also, is important to keep in mind. I think we'll weather this storm. I have a lot of thoughts on this, but I'm trying to be focused, in terms of areas that are most relevant for students that are considering these things. A couple other things that come to my mind. One would be, which country has the most billion-dollar companies? Which country has the largest percentage of global GDP? And maybe a lot of the companies that might hire a student in a country other than the US could be from a US-based company. So they're not exactly separate in that sense of things. Ultimately, I think, the US is understanding that it's a global economy and that companies that wish to continue to be successful financially and have, year-over-year earnings growth have to be sourcing individuals and employees that have the top skills available to them at a global scale. Whether those students and whether those employees are coming from the US or from another country. So amidst all these difficulties and tumultuous, scenarios, in my opinion, that ultimately will win out. Companies have to be profitable. They have to have the best talent in order to maintain that edge and be profitable. I guess one other thought here. To me, again, this just underscores, you need to go to a very strong school. You need to go to, if you're seeking A program like an MEM, it, ideally is something that is technically grounded and focused. And again, just underscores you need to go to a program that wants you there, like that the actual faculty and staff and students of that program want you there as a person, as an individual, and they're going to be with you through that whole journey. One of the pieces of Purdue MEM to me that is also most important is that we are with our students from the time they're even thinking about the program and applying through graduation, and into alumni years, as I mentioned, right? So it's a situation, so, we're with you not only when you apply, during that recruiting phase, right? But then we see you on the first day of orientation and that whole week, right? And we see you prepping you for career fairs like Industrial Roundtable and Engineering Expo and our Semiconductor Career Fair, and our Consulting Career Fair and things like that. We see you for our social outings. We see you when you're getting involved in the PM Club. We see you at our end of semester celebrations. Like, we're meeting with you one-on-one for resume guidance and for interview prep and offer evaluation. And then when you graduate, like, it's a bittersweet moment because we've been with you through a lot of these different layers of your journey, and we're excited, for you to be off to what's next, but we're also sad to see you go. And the reason we're sad is because we've just had those shared experiences throughout. So, yes, there's these macro conditions of H-1B and governments. Those things change, government administrations change. If you're a student that's targeting fall 26, you're maybe looking to get into the full-time market in 2 or 3 years from there. There could actually be and we'll see what happens, but there could actually be this interesting experience where, because there are fewer international students, it could actually be this kind of surprising competitive advantage, even if the actual number of postings available would be a little bit lower. So there's a lot to consider, for sure. I hope students, again, just kind of stay true to themselves, really think through what is motivating me to want to do this experience in the first place. And then just don't get distracted by influencers and sensationalist headlines and uninformed instant reactions, right? Stay focused on historical data and stay focused on where job offers are happening, because that's where the largest companies are based. So I could go on about this.
Yeah,
I'll stop
absolutely,
there.
no. And I resonate with so much of that, right? And this is, essentially not a question, more like a comment from my end, if I may, and I'd love to hear your, and if you resonate with that too, right? You said reacting to news and influencers and knee-jerk reactions, and you can make knee-jerk reactions to certain things, but not when you're moving to a different country and you're trying to, shift your career and your life all around, right? Based on very myopic decision making, it's very worrying to see a lot of students picking, other countries which I don't want to name, where historically the data hasn't supported a great number of job opportunities for international students. Just because there is a news article or an influencer writing about something, you're hinging your entire future based on these 2-3 months of news and not historical hard numbers, which is very, very worrying.
Yeah.
And the other aspect of it, right? Some students are able to view this timeline thing, saying that, okay, we cannot predict the future, but historically, yes, the US is a massive economy, right? In India, we graduate about 1 million engineers a year. I believe in the US, that's about 1/10 that.
Yeah.
And that is a $30 trillion economy that is greatly driven by the tech industry, whereas we are, significantly smaller, not driven by tech. So there are going to be engineers who are looking to move outside, and it's all about supply and demand at the end of the day, right? But the other aspect of the job search in the US, I'm sorry, this question is going a little long, but I'd like to give you that context. I was doing a session with a few students who secured jobs and internships in the US so that they can run through the process, so our applicants can understand what that process looks like. Yeah. And they were very measured in terms of how much effort it takes and the number of opportunities they had to apply for, the limited number of interviews they got. But in the end, they were fine. These students were from very good universities, and they said, Yeah, the previous batch got a job while they were at the program or within 2 months. It took me 4 months to find a job after the program. But the big thing that a lot of applicants took away from that was, oh, but all these guys said the job search was tough. Oh, apparently they applied to like 500 jobs before they could get, 2 interviews. Oh, apparently a lot of companies are not sponsoring. And if you say you need a sponsorship, they're not offering interviews. And it was always the case for a number of years. But again, it's adding to that entire, fire of, oh, the OPT, the H1B, and apparently the job search is very tough. But wasn't the job search always tough?
It's always been tough. And we need to own that. We need to acknowledge that fact, right? Like, if you're going to any other country, if I'm going to a different country to look for a job, the job search will be tough for me. But of course, this is built into the reality of the experience, right? And I think what I've seen as a trend recently is people like maybe retroactively applying logic, like, oh, I read this thing about H1B, so now I'm thinking back to my own experience, or I read this one post about someone. Okay, like, you don't even need to believe my one human being perspective here on this. Like, simply just go look at, again, GDP and look at billion-dollar companies and look at, historical growth of economic, projections, and look at long-term sustained historical success for job outcomes, right? These are the things that you want to base your decision on. Of course, like, I very much understand if somebody decides, like, maybe not right now, I would fully understand that. And it's a big decision, but at least make this important decision for yourself and with your family based on like verifiable information. You're an engineer, right? Be an engineer and use data to make a good choice. The other thing with the job search, to your point, Sweekar, like, we can control the process. We cannot control the outcome, right? And so we talk a lot with our students about, getting more comfortable being uncomfortable. We talk a lot with our students about, having a consistent, verifiably effective process, and the result will be there. An alum, Kashif, that I'm thinking of, once said something to me. He was having, when did he graduate? I don't know, 7 years ago. He's doing great with KPMG now. He and I met in one of Purdue's newer buildings at the time, and he was having difficulty in his search. So this was pre-pandemic. This man with like 5 or 6 years of great experience. And he said, I just keep believing I can, what did he say? If I keep making good causes, I'll get a good effect. And that's always really stuck with me, right? Like, we can't force someone to get an offer, right? We can control our job application process, our networking approach, our projects that we gain experience from, how we network with our peers and with our alumni and with strangers, in industry. We can control our mindset. We can control where we put our energy. Those are things we can control. So let's not get distracted by unverified things that kind of turn the process sour and maybe make us start to question ourselves, right? Like, let's control what's in front of us. And yeah, it's been difficult. You have to go into this experience understanding that it will be challenging, right? And then at the same time, don't you want to do something that is challenging, that other people are not doing, right? I mean, if you're going to make this decision, you really lean into it and be excited about the challenge, right? Like, embrace it and go, this is part of it, but I'm going to a program that I believe in, that wants me there. I'm going to build some great relationships, and I'm going to climb the mountain, right? I mean, that's what you're doing when you make a choice like this. No one's handing anything out, right? It's not a transactional experience, right? So go and make it happen, and do that at a top institution and a high quality program.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And in fact, that's what, I tell, students as well. Like, if you're going to shirk away from hard work, and if the hard work worries you, you're probably better off not going. Right? That's not a challenge you want to take. But if you are willing to put in the work, there's most likely going to be some, great outcomes. And I love that statement about the transactional nature of education, which, even though we talked about numbers and careers and OPT, right, and we've clarified, however the audience wants to perceive it, like logically, that's all there in terms of the return on investment. It's all there. But Eric, one experience that stood out to me when I was on the Purdue campus was I sort of unexpectedly ran into students that I helped right at the beginning of the application process. Right, the first conversation I remember with the student and the parent, right, and very diligent, had all the credentials on paper, but perhaps a little soft-spoken, timid, worried, a little underconfident. Maybe was not as confident in her skills, even though they were all there at that point in time. And this was like 3 years ago now. And when I came onto the Purdue campus, I think she was done with the program, and we had lunch, and we were interacting, and it was like I was talking to a completely different person in terms of the kinds of co-ops that she did, the impact she had at her company, how she was communicating in her belief in the future. And I believe at that point, correct me if I'm wrong, and of course we're not going to take names, but she didn't have a full-time offer.
Right.
But the attitude was like, I'll get it. Yeah, I think I'll get it. I don't have any problem with that. I'm confident in what I built. Isn't that like half the battle won? Like having that belief that, yeah, it'll work out, right? That oftentimes it just does the job for individuals.
Yeah, this is true.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard, by the way, that person does now have an offer. I'll tell you more about that if you haven't heard once we're finished here. I'm very happy for her. So, yeah, the transactional piece, this is, I do understand it. I really do, right? Because it has to be, it's a financial decision. It's a career decision, particularly for individuals that are already, 2 or 3 years in to their full-time work ex. Sometimes maybe there's a family pressure component to that, or certainly some influence, as there should be, obviously. But the idea may be that, I paid X and now I get Y. I sort of think that's selling short the idea of education, like philosophically. Of course, for an MEM style program, it's industry focused. We have our full year co-op opportunity as well. Like that's an intrinsic part of the experience that's built in for sure. So I entirely respect and understand why that's maybe on the forefront of somebody's mind. At the same time, there's so much growth that's kind of intangible that can't necessarily be quantified that happens across this experience. I mean, if this is your first time living outside of your home country, if this is your first time being fully responsible for the entirety of your day-to-day operations, if you will, right? If this is your first time getting exposure to people from dozens of different other countries, and by the way, you're at a rigorous institution and you're going through a graduate program, there's just other types of growth that will happen there that is with you forever, that you own it now. That is, you're part of who you are. And it is that confidence that you mentioned. It's that understanding of ambiguity and how to navigate that, and being okay with not having a solution right away. It's communication. It's emotional intelligence, which we, by the way, do training on. It's team roles and understanding how to navigate those dynamics, which are certainly relevant for professional roles, but also just really useful for somebody personally. And by the way, we do trainings on that too. And it's just like expanded worldview. I think you understand better even your home country and culture by going abroad. That was my experience, at least. I came to appreciate all the good and bad and the nuances and the in-betweens there. And just having a broader perspective on life is just something that can only be gained through lived experience. There's no shortcut for it. The other thing, that I like to think about when it comes to that transactional idea of education is you still have to do the work. right? You still have to take ownership for yourself of the process. You know, we have a lot of students that go into automotive, you know, traditional OEMs and you know, new EV makers, without naming specific company names, but it's great. You know, if you go and buy, you know, that new Tesla model, just because you bought the model, you still have to take care of that vehicle. You still have to, you know, maintain it. Unless you've got full self-drive mode, you know, you got to be the one to actually navigate this experience. The same thing is true with education, right? So what you're getting when you join a program is opportunity. What you're getting are resources. What you're getting, hopefully, is a supportive team and environment. And then it's up to you to leverage all of what's in front of you. You know, I talk a lot with our students, like, please don't come to Purdue MEM just for Purdue MEM. Come to Purdue MEM because of this, but also because of this. You know, it would be a missed opportunity to only focus on this small circle of MEM while you're with us. Like, you have this whole environment of Purdue and people you would never think of meeting, and you may not meet if you don't take the opportunity while you're here, right? So, like, again, I come back to that, you know, we want you to grow as a person, as an academic, as a student, and as a professional. And there's just no way to shortcut that other than going through that experience.
Absolutely right. So with, you know, all of that's been said, you know, during this interaction that we've had, and, you know, everything that students are evaluating right now, do you have any final bits of advice to give to students who are thinking about pursuing this, you know, whole journey of academic and professional fulfillment in the US?
All right. Final words of wisdom. I'll put that in quotes. I'll try. You know, I think one thing that comes to my mind is that flexibility is more valuable than it's been, you know, and maybe some uncertain times, if we want to characterize them as such, you know, having flexibility is a major value add for you. And when I'm talking flexibility, I'm talking course choice for sure. I'm also talking about future career opportunities, right? And I think one of the magical elements of an MEM program, Purdue and across our consortium, and again, many other quality programs, is that from one curriculum, from a single program, we have students coming from all kinds of different backgrounds, you know, professionally, into different industry sectors, different undergraduate disciplines, and then using the program to then branch out into a huge range of roles. I mean, so like product, TPM, ops, supply chain, production manufacturing, consulting, entrepreneurship, you know, business intelligence, the list goes on. So like, give yourself flexibility, and that will give you more opportunities, you know, with your future career. I think another thought is really just know why you're interested in this experience to begin with. You know, like you were mentioning before, Srikar, like, this is a big decision. It's not one to be taken lightly. Yes, do your research, look into the data, look into those rankings as a starting point, you know, but really only do this if you want holistic growth. Like, if you understand it will be difficult, if you understand it will be challenging, and if you want to be the person that challenges yourself, right? And so go in giving that challenge a big hug, you know, and then get everything that you can out of this experience. My final thought, for most of our students, this is their last time being a full-time learner, you know, without quarterly profits driving the conversation, right? And without performance reviews, you know, just to be in a campus setting full-time and having the freedom to study what you want and to make new friends and to go on trips to different parts of the country. Like, oh, those were good years, right? Like, I would love to go back and have that experience again. So just like really yes, it's an ROI. You're making an investment, but oh my gosh, like it's a very special time of life, not one to be overlooked. And so, come in and just really enjoy it. I have to say that. Just enjoy being on a beautiful campus, meeting new people, and being a full-time learner.
Absolutely, and that is so important, right? I had the opportunity to stand up and ask Salman Rushdie a question one-on-one when I was at Dartmouth. The subsequent batches had Roger Federer congratulate them, on graduating. Imagine that. The folks at Duke are, having Ed Sheeran perform for them, and they're sitting in the front row. And while I was at Purdue, I could look at a piece of moon rock that
Yes.
Neil Armstrong brought back, and where are you going to get those experiences? And it's so important to absorb that. And thank you for bringing that up, Eric. And thank you so much for your time and sitting down and chatting with us. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope that the rest of your visit is as fruitful as well.
Yeah, thank you, Srikar. The time has gone by so fast. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It's extra special to have this chat here in Hyderabad with
Absolutely,
you, in the Gradvine offices.
Absolutely, yeah.
If you watched this video until this point, I'm sure you liked it. Why don't you subscribe?